Hello to everyone. So my name is Maël. My slides are in French, so if you speak English, just listen to my words and I will explain everything anyway. So I will talk a bit to you about Yarn. So first, who am I? So I work at Datadog, and before that I used to work for Facebook. And in this context, I started to contribute on Yarn, the package manager for JavaScript. So I spent 3 years working on it, and during this time I also happened to make some work on Flow itself. So I have some context on both Flow, Yarn, and TypeScript because we recently switched to TypeScript, and I wanted to talk a bit about this. So first, Yarn got created in 2016, and in that time, TypeScript was still very far away from what it is currently. There wasn't that many people using it. And we wanted the Yarn code base to be strongly typed. So what we decided to do was to go with Flow, which was developed within Facebook. So we had a lot of experience with it. So it was a success. It led to less bugs, which meant that we could iterate faster on the application. So overall, it was a good choice. Over time, some problems started to appear. So the first one was in terms of tooling. Inside Facebook, we had access to some pre-built tools, such as qu'il, which was an extension for Atom. But outside of Facebook, our external contributors had a lot of issues working on Yarn, mostly because of Flow. Another issue was that it made it difficult for people to contribute to Yarn itself. And another issue was that Flow has a lot of idiosyncrasies that are specific to its goals. So the Flow tries very hard to be a sound, which in French can be translated by strict, but it does this at the cost of user-friendliness. So for example, that's an example I really like. So imagine that you have just a function that takes a string and prints it. And you have a type user that contains a name. So what you will do is that you will check whether your user has a name, and if it does, you will print it. If you do this in Flow, you will get an error saying that you cannot call print with user.name because the name might be null. And by reading this code, you think that, wait, why? There is no way, I'm just checking for null. And Flow is actually kind of right, because what happens is that you're calling console log, and console log can be anything you want. Console log might have side effects, and Flow will tell you that, yeah, since you're calling a function, it might change the content of user, so no, just do your check again, or store the variable so that you can keep the inference, and that's right, that's correct. But it's not user-friendly, and in 99% of the case, it does not matter. So it means that you're making your development harder for the sake of cases that practically don't happen. It makes sense for the Facebook codebase, which is huge, but it doesn't make as much sense when working on an open source project, and you just need to encourage people to contribute. So to summarize, in my mind, soundness is only a key word. It shouldn't be a grand plan. So what I expect from a type system is to be able to iterate quickly, to have confidence that my code will work, and that it makes it easier for other people to contribute to my code. I'm not looking for soundness per se. Soundness is just a tool that helps with those three items. So everything is a trade-off. In security, you don't have perfect security. And it's the same thing with type systems. You can only have as good as you can until the cost starts to outweigh the value. So we switched to TypeScript. And it was a good choice because it led to better contributions by people who stayed. And it made our build system simpler. Since we didn't have to go through Babel itself, we could remove a bunch of things from the build pipeline. And it also led to out-of-the-box integrations with editors, such as VS Code. So that was overall a great choice. We also were able to integrate it with plug and play, which is the new install strategy that we are developing in Yarn, so that we don't have non-models. You might have heard of it. And lastly, it was kind of a subjective decision from me, because I felt like that over time, TypeScript would have more success than Flow. And again, since we wanted to acquire more contributors, then it made sense to use the tool that all our prospective contributors were already using. So since I felt like TypeScript would have more users, I decided to go with that. By switching to TypeScript, we decided to go very far in typing again, even more our code base. And so one thing in Yarn 1 that we did wrong was file system access. File system access is a pretty difficult thing, especially for a package manager, because if you use the standard APIs, it's not typed. For example, let's say that you're running code on Windows or Linux. You will not have the same behavior if you use the standard path model. On Windows, you will have backslashes, and in Linux, you will have forward slashes. It's not a huge thing, but it makes your code undeterministic. And everything in Yarn is supposed to be deterministic. So we wanted to fix that. And on Windows, so I said that we have those backslash classes. But are they really important? Why can't we just use Unix path even on Windows? So that's what we did, basically. We decided to go with what we call portable path, which are statically typed kind of path that our own FS layer only accept, meaning that we never get to make a read file sync, for example, with a path that didn't came through one of the functions that convert path from not portable, native, to portable. To give you a quick example, here we have a small snippet that takes the file name, which is native. It contains backslashes, it contains the drive letter, and converts it into a Unix path. Then later, when we need to actually use it through the Node.fs API, we just switch it back into a native format. And since we have this FS layer I mentioned, we just have to actually use the FS layer with the portable path, and everything will work. Even better, since everything is typed, if we try to send directly a string or native path into the FS layer, TypeScript will tell us that no, you cannot do this because your path is susceptible to contain backslashes or drive letters, making it non-deterministic. So that's the kind of thing that we did with TypeScript. But even though it was we spent a lot of, sorry, even though we had a lot of success, not everything was great or still great. For one, the watch mode is not as good with TypeScript as it is with Flow. With TypeScript, the watch mode is just basically the incremental mode. Each time you run, each time you change a file, TypeScript will still run the type check on all your files. It will try to cache a few things inside the check, but it will still need to retype check everything, making it very slow. With Flow, it's kind of different because you have a daemon that is able to track the dependencies between all the files. So if you change one file, Flow will not recheck everything. It will only recheck things that actually changed. And that makes a lot of difference. Another problem with TypeScript that we had is that, so you might have seen the state of JavaScript 2019. And one of the numbers from this survey is that more than 50% of the JavaScript user base is using TypeScript. So that's great, especially for this meetup, right? One of the problems that comes with that is that since TypeScript has more than 50% of the user base, it means that all their work is affecting a lot of people. So they don't have a lot of leeway on breaking things or innovating. On the other hand, if people want to try something new in terms of tooling, it has to work with TypeScript. There is no other way, because otherwise it won't work with more than half of the JavaScript ecosystem, meaning that nobody will practically use it, right? So it means that since the TypeScript compiler is not extendable, a lot of innovations are gated behind the TypeScript team. Fortunately, they are aware of this, and they have been trying to find a solution to make sure that people are not stuck. So there is the plugin API that they are thinking about. So I think that this will be unlocked on the long term, but still, it's something to keep in mind. In terms of future between Yarn and TypeScript, we want to build better integrations between package managers and TypeScript. So for example, something that we noticed by developing Yarn with TypeScript was the problem of add types packages. Usually, when we wanted to add a package, to add a dependency to a package, we needed to check whether whether it shipped its own types, or whether there were types on the add types repository, definitely typed. And we needed to check which version we needed to add, and that was kind of a problem. So what if the package manager was just able to, when you had Lodash, see that Lodash doesn't ship its types, see that there is a add type / Lodash package, and just add types Lodash directly into your dependencies. So that's what we did with a Yarn plugin, which is optional, which you need to install yourself. But so once you have installed it, Yarn is able to automatically make this kind of help. Similarly, we have been able to add support for plug and play directly within TypeScript, but it's supported and maintained by Yarn itself. Maybe at some point it could make sense to move that to the TypeScript chunk. So that's the two main things that we are looking at. So let me show you a quick example of what I meant with this plugin thing. So imagine that I'm creating a new project in TypeScript Paris. Here. Then I will create a new project with Yarn in it. Now I will use Yarn add in order to add a, let's say, left pad, right? Oh, I forgot to run Yarn install. Of course. Oh, I see. Here it is. So usability, right? So I run Yarn install. So everything is good. Now let's say that I'm adding left pad. Yep, indeed. So if I look at my package.json, I have left pad, but I don't have the types of left pad. Now, what I can do is that I will first run a Yarn plugin import with Yarn pkg plugin TypeScript. So it downloads automatically from our repository the version of the TypeScript plugin. And once we do that, we just have to run Yarn add. So we said Lodash, right? Let's try with Lodash. And here you can see that Yarn has been able to automatically install not only Lodash, but also the types package. And if we look into the package.json, everything got saved as you would expect. So that's pretty nice, because as soon as you want to use TypeScript, so it takes a bit of time because the TypeScript package is pretty large. Thankfully, everything is cached once you download it. So in practice, it's actually very fast. I just cleared my cache just before the presentation in order not to use a hot cache and cheat. So I will create a quick tsconfig. And now if I call TSC, the TypeScript compiler, so I should get an error telling me that, yeah, because there are no type definition for, oh, yeah, presentation, right? So, let's do it again. Okay. Okay. So left pad actually has types, apparently. That's a good thing. But for other packages where you might need to add the add types packages yourself, Yarn is able to install them automatically. So that's what we want to do, basically, to decrease the amount of friction that you need to go through when creating new projects, be it TypeScript or regular JavaScript. And I think there are a lot of experiments that are possible in order to reach this state. So that's my talk. Thanks for listening. If you have any question about Flow or TypeScript or how we switch from one to the other, or Yarn too, feel free to ask me. I will stay around. Thank you. There's one question.
Hi. What was blocking you for doing the same native abstraction for parses in Flow?
Sorry?
You made a path abstraction for in TypeScript.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what was blocking you for doing the same in Flow?
So it wouldn't have been impossible with Flow. Clearly, I think both type systems are very similar. Two main things about Flow is that, so one important thing about Flow in particular is that it is written in OCaml. And OCaml is a very different language from JavaScript. And when you want to contribute to Flow, you really cannot, because it's very different. I've been able to spend hours, days sometimes, trying to figure out why some very small one-line change wasn't working, and trying to fight the compiler in order to understand that, oh, yeah, right, of course there's a type somewhere that is broken. And when you figure out the problem in your line of code, then you feel very smart, but you still lost a few hours or days of work. So contributing to the Flow code base is very, very difficult, meaning that in practical terms, it cannot be accessible by all the contributors that we want to work with. So in this case, for the path library, it was not that it was impossible to do with Flow. It was just that working with Flow would not have been able to satisfy the other requirement that we had on the project.
How long did it take to migrate from Flow to TypeScript? Is it just renaming the files, adding tsconfig, and it's done? Or you had to change some types? And
so no, in our case, it was a bit different because Yarn 2 is a completely rewrite from Yarn 1. But in general, I think that migrating from Flow to TypeScript is not that as difficult as doing it the other way around. You still cannot just change the extension and expect things to just work. Flow has a lot of utilities and syntaxes that are slightly different from the TypeScript counterparts. But for example, the code that I shared at the middle of the presentation is something that wouldn't work in Flow, but would work in TypeScript. And the way you would fix it for Flow would make it work, would work as well with TypeScript. So there are no strong incompatibilities with the type when you use them, but when you author them, sometimes, especially with generics, it becomes quite different. One problem though with Flow is the number of third-party typed packages. So for example, let's say that you have a bunch of dependencies in your project and you want to migrate from, if you want to migrate from Flow to TypeScript, you will not have this problem. But again, if you were to migrate the other way from TypeScript to Flow, then a lot of dependencies wouldn't have types. Any other question? Good.